So we're here today, The Path to Enlightenment and Inner Peace. I'm Shari Arison, and today we're here with Lama Dvora. Hi, how are you?
Very good, very good. Good talking to you.
Yeah. It's nice to meet you.
Our first time, I think.
Yes, I've heard a lot about you, but we've never met, so I'm happy to meet you. Why don't you tell me and the audience first a little bit about yourself, about your background, and what has brought you to what we're going to talk about, which is your teaching.
So I was born in Poland. As a child, I came to Israel, grew up here, got my education here. Later, myself with my family, we moved to the U.S. I have degrees.
Where in the U.S.? Where did you move?
Right now, we're located in California, but before we were many years in New Jersey, then in Arizona. So, and we started in Louisiana. So, all over.
But you say you're in California. Don't you live in Israel?
I share my time because my children live in California. Okay. So we go visit, but I teach here in Israel. So most of my time I'm here in Israel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I got education in mathematics, in computer science. I have graduate degrees in both. Then I worked in Bell Labs, which was a prestigious research institution, which no longer exists, unfortunately, where they invented the transistor.
Wow.
One thing. Yeah, it was very famous, very prestigious labs. That era ended for the labs and for me. And in the meantime, I got acquainted with teachers, with the Dharma, and I got very attracted and interested and felt a deep calling.
Okay. When you say Dharma, explain for those who don't understand.
So Dharma is in general is the Buddhist teaching, which has many facets, and there's many versions of it and many streams in Buddhism. Interestingly, I was introduced to the Dharma by a teacher who was not a Buddhist teacher, Ram Dass, who many people know. He had a Hindu guru. I met him in a workshop in upstate New York at one point, and at the end of the workshop, I came up to him and he said, "No, you go to a Buddhist center." So that's what I did. I just followed his advice. I started with a Buddhist center in Massachusetts called IMS, which is a Vipassana center.
Oh, okay.
Much like Tovana here in Israel. And I practiced for 6 years. They were in Massachusetts. I was living at the time in New Jersey, so I was traveling back and forth.
But you were
twice a year.
You were still doing research at the time?
Yeah, still working at the labs.
Okay.
Yeah, and had 3 children. And then after a while, after 6 years of that, I was going for retreats at this IMS center, which was very sweet. But then I reached a point where I felt I want to make more progress and I need a teacher. And so I came up with one of their main teachers over there, and I said, how can I hook up in a more personal relationship with the teacher? And he just shrugged his shoulders because they didn't have that kind of relationship. There were teachers where, different teachers would come and give retreats, but there was no personal connection with the teacher. So I was like at a loss for a while. Then I met, there's a magazine in the US, Tricycle, which is a Buddhist magazine, and they are organizing once a year. I hope they still do that, I'm not sure. In Central Park in New York, they were organizing what they call Change Your Mind Day. And
really? I've never heard of the magazine, and I've never heard of that day, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, I hope they still do that. I'm not sure. Certainly now with the corona, this is not happening, but
in the future.
Yeah. So the magazine is called Tricycle, and it represents many streams in Buddhism, but mostly the Vipassana, the Theravada tradition. which is Southeast Asia. And so I went to this event. They set up a tent in Central Park, and people would sit on the lawn, and they would invite many teachers. And it was just pleasant and nice, and a day of wisdom and kindness. So we just, and then one of the teachers really attracted me in particular. And what was different about him, what distinguished him from the others, was that he was very joyful. He was very joyful, and I said, "Oh, I want a teacher like that." So, and I'm not a groupie. I don't follow celebrities, etc. But here, the attraction was strong. So I went to the back of the stage after he finished his shtick, and I asked, "Where can I pick up more of that?" And he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "New Jersey." "And what town?" I said, "Marlboro." I said, "Oh, then you're just 15 minutes away from the greatest Lama in the world." So really, it turns out that 2 towns south of where I lived was a little temple of Tibetan Buddhists. So following and he said, "Come Sunday, 2:00, there's going to be a great teacher there." And so I did I followed his advice, came on Sunday, 2:00. I was with my son. Totally could not connect. The teacher, Tibetan Buddhism is so different from the Theravadan tradition. There's all the ritual aspects, and people were prostrating and offering mandalas, and it was like too religious for me. Too many
ceremonial,
and plus the teacher had a very heavy Tibetan accent, and it was difficult to follow. I did not connect. So a whole year passed. There was another change of mind day. I went to the Central Park, exactly same thing happened. Same teacher goes on stage, which is not the one in her.
The joyful
one who was a student of the Lama. He comes up again. He's still joyful. I still go to the back of the stage. He says, "Come Sunday, 2:00. So that's what I did. And this time I decided to be more humble, and I said, maybe I need to have a little more patience and listen a little deeper. And so I didn't leave in the middle like I did last time. And then I connected to the Tibetan Lama, who was really an extraordinary Lama. He passed away in 2004, but I was fortunate to have 6 years in his presence. And he introduced me, he initiated me, gave me very deep teachings, and both, in a group, but also in person.
When you say deep teachings, is it more meditation? Is it more philosophy?
The Tibetan tradition has it. They have their own streams as well, but in this tradition that this Lama was teaching, which is called the Gelug tradition, they emphasize first what they call stages of the path to enlightenment, which is a form that the Tibetans develop to bring you in quickly, because the Buddha's teachings span 45 years of teachings, the ancient Buddha's teachings, 2,500 years ago. He was teaching different places, different times, and it's like a huge mass of teachings, which it's difficult to find your way there. So the Tibetans made kind of a shortcut. They just extracted stages that if you follow those stages in a particular order with a genuine teacher, you will make progress towards the goal of enlightenment.
Do you have maybe captions of the stages? Could you?
Yeah. There's first stage is find a teacher and learn how to treat them properly.
Okay.
That would be the first stage. But then come stages like recognizing impermanence of our life. There will be a stage recognizing the rarity of this kind of human life with all the opportunities that it affords, all the good fortune to have a human body in a world where wisdom exists and teachers exist. then there would be a stage talking about karma and consequences, meaning how our deeds lead to consequences. If you plant this seed, you're going to have this kind of outcome. You plant this seed, you're going to have a different. So learning
cause and effect,
causality, and if you do want to be happy, that's what you need to do. And if you do the other thing, you won't be happy. So and that leads you directly to morality. And that will be the point of morality. That's what makes you happy, and this thing will not make you happy. So this will be teaching of morality. Then there is the teaching about the nature of life in this world, the nature of life in this world. That even if you're fortunate to have, your basic needs met, and your financial needs met, and your family is good and healthy, etc. Sooner or later, this must go away.
Right.
This must go away. It's impermanent. So relying on that as a source of your own happiness would be a mistake.
Right. Okay.
Because sooner or later it'll fail. Yeah. In that case, then how can you find a genuine happiness? And so then comes a whole path of how to find genuine happiness. And part of it is also developing what they call metta, which is that love for other beings, the desire to have others have the same happiness you want for yourself, to be able to bring it to others.
Well, that's when you understand that we're all connected, and that
yes,
really no one's separate from anyone or anything. Yeah,
absolutely. That will be part of the teaching, and part of that, how to achieve that, would be meditation, all different kinds of meditation, some more advanced. But even those steps are meditations in themselves. Then there is different meditations to develop concentration, to have very fine-tuned attention skills, meditation to open up your heart, to develop compassion. So all stages on the path.
So what was the switch from going and really being with a teacher and studying, and then basically you now have your own center, correct? What is your center called?
We call it Arava Spiritual Center because we're located in the Arava. It's a leased property. We're leasing property here. We don't have our own yet. We hope to have one. It's a big effort. So
explain to the listeners, those who are our audience, where is the Arava? It's the Negev.
Right. So Arava is part of the southern desert in Israel, which is called the Negev. Arava is the eastern part of that desert, and it borders Jordan. And where we are now located is really not too far from the Jordanian border, like in the central Arava. Arava is the name. And we are renting this space with a resort, a kind of resort.
Like a retreat center?
That's what we're trying to make of it. This over here, the owner is conducting, they're renting it out to different workshops, yoga workshops, dance workshops, all kinds of, he himself is a peace-loving person, so he's organizing peace activities as do we in the same location.
Was there a reason for choosing the desert? Because I know from experience that it's very peaceful, and I think the headspace there is very unique. But was there a reason why you chose that area?
You see, I was in deep retreat when that happened. My students found this place.
Wow.
So I wasn't even consulted because the instructions were to not bother me. Okay. But they did not. And it was a surprise when I came out. It was kind of a surprise because not only did they make an agreement with the owner, but they also built a huge teaching hall. And they also built a house for me. Wow. And they also built what is now a monastery, the first of its kind in Israel. Where we have
that's interesting.
Yeah, so students did all of that with their own means, with their own efforts. They were commuting from the center to do the work every weekend. It's all built because the owner here is also an architect. He has his particular style that he prefers. So everything needs to be adobe. So you need to have adobe bricks made of the local sand and mud. They managed to find one machine that produces those bricks, and it produces them one at a time. Very primitive machine. So the students were coming and producing those bricks. They produced 80,000 bricks. They built my house and the monastery and the huge teaching hall.
So huge difference between California and the desert and Israel, and go back and forth. And where are your students from? Are they international? Are they Israelis? Or?
Right now, they're almost everybody is Israeli. I teach in Hebrew. So that's the unique aspect of my teaching is I take the teachings which I received in Tibetan and English.
Okay.
And I translated everything into Hebrew. So they get authentic scriptures translated into Hebrew. Huge effort.
Since this show is in English, I mean, if someone wanted to get in touch with you to ask questions, or how would they do that?
So we are trying to establish an international center for peace, which will also include a retreat center. We call it EVAM, which is EHVAM, EVAM. And if you mail to info@evam.org, you say you want to find me, then somebody will forward it to me.
Great.
So info@evam.com, and we do have it a website for EVAM in English.
Okay.
EVAM, www.ehvam.org, and then they can find a lot of information. This center is like an outgrowth of the current activity that we're doing here in the Arava Spiritual Center, because Arava Spiritual Center was mostly focused on transmitting the teachings, and actually the more advanced teachings, because the more open teachings I already did before the center was established. This was all done over a period of many years.
But when you go back to the States, are you teaching there as well, or not so much?
No, that's just family vacation.
Family, okay.
And I go to teachings over there with different teachers. Okay. So that's an opportunity to.
So tell me, what would be the essence? I mean, if somebody came to study with you, and this program is about the path to enlightenment and inner peace.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of people, how people came in and, what they received from these teachings, how it changed their lives? Do you have any stories?
Oh, so many. Many of my students are teaching now, the open teachings all over Israel, many small groups in homes, people's homes. And one person brings the other because they see a change in them. People usually, the first thing people report is a change in relationship at home. People become more peaceful, they become less reactive, they seek less to blame the other and take responsibility. And that creates, first, it lowers the volume of agitation in people's mind. And family is such a huge source of both happiness and suffering, can be. So this in itself is very inspiring. So their friends come, and after a while, and over there we teach, the teachings that we give there are based on the monastic teachings in the Gelug tradition. So in the Gelug tradition, it's a study course of maybe 20-25 years where they go over the Buddhist classics, and based on work that one of my teachers has done, we have a series of courses in a Western style, which is classes, homeworks, exams, where people can just learn
what would be the shortest course? Because a lot of times when you tell people 25 years, they get put
we don't take 25 years.
Of course.
And people do it in 3-4 years. That's the open teachings.
Okay. But do you do lectures? Do you have a series of lectures?
All recorded on the. We have a website where they all appear.
Okay.
And it's free for all. Everybody can go. It's called www.heart, like heart, -dharma.org.il. I think now they're transitioning to just dharma.org.il.
That's also in Hebrew, or do you have an English?
Everything is in Hebrew. Everything is in Hebrew. There is a very small part. At one point, I was teaching a group of Lebanese and Israelis, and that was in English. But that was a long time ago, and that's a very small part of the teaching. So far, not yet. I have not. I've been. My focus was.
Which is wonderful, and I'm so happy that you're here and doing this for Israel and the region. I think it's so important. But if somebody's listening to this and they would want more information in English, what would you recommend? What would you recommend for them to do?
If they write to me, I can.
You can direct.
I can direct many ways. And some of the teachings do appear in English. So there are meditations. There is Insight meditation an application that you can log into, and there are meditations there that I conduct in English.
Oh, actually. Wonderful. Okay, that's important.
Yeah, and I actually did teach all of these teachings in the US in the past, but that was years ago and it was not recorded, so unfortunately. Okay. And probably in the future I will go into that more in English. And we are also, one of my students, a dear student, is making a huge effort on taking these teachings and translating into Arabic.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so he started, it's a huge undertaking because, the teaching, there's an ocean of teachings. So, yes. but he started and he's getting collaboration from Arabs and very sweet effort, very, very
Do you
sweet.
have Arab Israeli students as well? I mean, those that speak Hebrew?
I don't have a regular student here, but there is one person who is helping. Chaim is the person who is organizing this effort. Kamal is an Arab teacher from Nazareth, and he's been coming here, and I think he considers himself a student.
Okay.
So but he didn't attend the classes when I gave them in person, but I think he's studying with my students. So, and then he has a group of friends in Nazareth, and one of the activities we have here in the center is peace conferences.
Okay.
And
what do you do at the Peace Conference?
The last one, for example, that we had was in February this year, just before the corona. And we had over 200 people here, and many dignitaries from both the rabbis and Arab leaders and academicians from Israel, from the West Bank, from Bethlehem, from peace leaders that all came together, Druze, the leaders of the Druze community, Professor Ahmad Natur, who is like a law professor in Beersheba, who is used to be a Qadi. And so we, for example, and many others.
And what do you do in that kind of a peace conference? What do you do? Is it just a open conversation? Is it lectures?
So we have panels. We have panels where leaders would converse, and there were youth panel, there were women panel, there were a lot of music and art as well. Circles of dialogue and conversation and exchange. Art. Parts that were artistic. It was very, very,
next time, let me know. I would love to come.
Yeah, I think Asi
came. Yes, I know, but it was last minute, and I couldn't make it. But I would love to come if I know in advance.
Yeah, we hope to have a next time. Well, now with the corona, it's difficult.
Yeah, but
it will go away.
Everything's temporary. Everything comes to an end, right? You said that before, so even this will come to an end at some point.
And we are getting ready as a group to go into retreat.
Okay.
And so one important, this center, this Evam Center, which is this outgrowth that we envision of the Arava Spiritual Center, is a center that has several goals. One is continue the teachings that we are already doing. Another one is a retreat center. So people that are ready for a deeper practice, a deeper retreat, can go there and work deeper on their meditation, on their minds, on their hearts, on opening their compassion, on developing skills that then they can come out and be very effective peace leaders, for example, also, or community leaders, or people that affect change in society. So
let me ask you, how long is a retreat like that?
Differing lengths. So many of my students have already done maybe 4 1-month retreats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Long retreat.
We're getting ready now with a group of students to go into a 1-year retreat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
I myself have done
it. You do really deep work. I mean, your work is very deep from what I understand.
Yeah, I myself did a 3-year retreat.
Okay.
Back in Arizona before I came here. That's when people were not allowed to contact me. And
what was that called? What was the retreat called in Arizona?
The center is called Diamond Mountain.
Okay. All right. So if you wanted to give a tip to those that are watching us on how to, I mean, it's funny to ask in like one, sentence, a tip of reaching inner peace and enlightenment, but what would that tip be?
Well, we all want to be happy. None of us wants to suffer. And just like I want to be happy and don't want any suffering, everybody else wants the same things. Everybody else. Even if they tell you otherwise, don't believe them. So what we want is to find ways to find genuine happiness, not one that depends on outside conditions or events, but one that comes from within, because you've lived a good life, because you've led a moral life, because your heart is good, because you're open, because you have purified a lot of afflicting emotions and afflicted non-functioning worldviews. You have purified that. And then you find a certain sense of well-being. Mm-hmm. You find that, and it's stable. It's not dependent on other conditions. It's not dependent whether people like you or not, or they praise you or not, or you are poor or not. It comes from inside, because you have worked.
Your tip really is to find the path within.
Yeah, and then you are able to be an inspiration and a force for change in your community, because you have developed your heart. Yeah, because you have done that inner work, and that inner work will propel you to work for others, and you will be effective in working for others, both. So
I think that's what the world needs right now. I think that's what we need individually. That's what we need as a whole, is for people to really to connect to their inner, really love and compassion and just a person for oneself and for everyone around.
I remember myself as a young girl, and I shared that was the initial cause. When I was a young girl and I heard about violent events where people were killed, and I was still very young and open, and I couldn't stop crying. And those were not people that I knew, but there was a senseless killing, and I couldn't stop crying. And I was 16 at the time, and I said, I don't know how to stop that, but it's not right. So then after I studied all those years in Dharma, I said, okay, now I have the tools to help affect the change. May take time, will take time, but what else do you have to do? So that was the inspiration, the impetus, and the power, the backwind that was driving me to do all the hard work that I was doing here. And it caught on to people. People got inspired.
You're talking and you've touched my heart, because when I was a young girl, I felt exactly the same way. I could not understand why people don't get along and why people are so cruel to one another. And till today, when I look around, it's something that I can't understand. It's like, we're all connected. We're all one. We all come from the same source. So
when we look at that, we say we don't divide people into good or bad, because we all have all kinds of in us. What we do, what we can distinguish, is people who can gain the wisdom and people who have not yet. So the wisdom of how this world works. What is the nature of our reality? What does make us happy? What makes us miserable? What is the nature of suffering? Where is it coming from? How can I stop that? How can I find happiness? How can I find the ultimate happiness? And how can I help others find ultimate happiness? And that spreads all, the whole rainbow of domains. It could be aspects of peace, could be aspects of financial freedom for people, racial freedom from racial tension, from racial discrimination, from national discrimination, all kinds of, and then that's just it. Yeah. If one thinks that this person is inferior because of their skin color or their nationality, etc., that to me is ignorance.
Yeah.
So it's like wisdom fighting ignorance. Yeah. And so we're not labeling someone as evil. We say, okay, there's a room for a teaching. The teaching will not happen if it doesn't come with compassion. You cannot teach a person if you're not viewing them with compassion.
Exactly. But I think compassion comes when you have compassion for yourself, and then you have compassion for others.
Of course, you have to start with yourself. Definitely. And you have to clean up your mind first. Yeah.
Lama Dvora, thank you so much. It was nice meeting you. Believe it or not, our time's up, but it was very interesting. And
same here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm happy to talk to you. And hopefully people hear that and they get inspired by these causes. And maybe we need a lot of support to have this center going, to have it our own place, and then to support the work of this place and bring other people to benefit from our work, which we would like to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.